I have the pleasure of introducing Jeffrey Ding, our student speaker this evening. Anyone tasked with introducing Jeffrey usually has a lot of material to work with. He has a record that includes everything from a national debate championship, a litany of the University of Iowa's top merit awards, a UISG vice presidency, the Truman, Udall, and Boren scholarships, as well as, in this last year, a recognition with both the Hancher-Finkbein Medallion and a Rhodes Scholarship, one of just 32 full scholarships to the University of Oxford awarded nationally. Now, this kind of prowess can lead to mythology. It can lead to assumptions about who a person is and how he lives his life. You might even start to think of him as some sort of super suave success machine. One of the great things about Jeffrey, though, is that when you get to know him, you understand that charm and aesthetics are not necessarily the tools he uses most regularly in service of his goals. I suspect that many of you have seen him blow by you on campus in a full sprint, hair wild and clothes an afterthought, because he'd rather take a 5th class than sleep in or show up for a committee meeting instead of showering. While he may not be as smooth as Jack Kennedy or Justin Trudeau just yet, Jeffrey, more importantly, is a great friend and collaborator who will risk connection to others, even when there is no immediate reward or reason to do so in his own life. His trust in the long game of relationship is at the root of his ability to inspire and engage his friends and mentors with humility and respect, to look for and find ways to embolden us, our hearts, our minds, and to collaborate and move forward with him instead of just watch him move forward himself. If you could join me in welcoming Jeffrey to the stage.
I didn't realize I was going to get roasted right before. Is this moving? Okay. I put off writing this speech until yesterday. I was having trouble coming up with what I wanted to say, so I turned to my sister Rachel for inspiration. She was watching footage of the octopus Houdini squeezing through tiny holes, dodging sharks, and popping open food containers, and suggested that I talk about this creature's magical ability to escape confinement. Ultimately, I decided that there wasn't much of a direct link between octopuses and graduation, but I think that I maintain that there is a speech about Octopus Houdini and college and the continual search for wonder that's floating out there just waiting to be written. I also drafted a version of this speech about my past life as a ramen arsonist. My introduction to my first year second floor dorm neighbors was facilitated by the black smoke that rolled off of the scorched remains of ramen I tried to cook in my new microwave. Free life advice for new graduates: always remember to add water when cooking ramen. In that version of this speech, I would have sketched out a college career full of awkward moments, peppered with anecdotes to illustrate how the honors program helps students embrace said awkwardness, and how this community can help turn ramen into rhinestones. But I thought that would focus way too much on me and would just add to the roast, and we've already had too much of that. Full disclosure, there's also another version of this speech that closes with a quote from Natasha Bedingfield, but Kelly vetoed that version as well. So I guess I settled on telling stories, and this thing that I've been thinking about lately about the stories we tell and how we tell them. One of my favorite spots on campus lies at the intersection of Dubuque Street and Iowa Avenue, partly because there's a pita pit close by and breakfast pitas are perfection, but mostly because of the words etched in the sidewalk near there. They're from a UI graduate, Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety. They read, "All of us felt it. We must have. For in front of their gate, before we drove away, still wearing their burnouses, we fell into a four-ply laughing hug. We were so glad to know one another and so glad that all the trillion chances in the universe had brought us to the same town and the same university at the same time." I had to look up four-ply because I'd only heard it used in the context of toilet paper, and I still have no idea what burnouses are, but the meaning comes through. You see, we can tell our story through numbers and letters, decimal point differences in our GPA, the accomplishments and awards listed on our resumes, retelling of the beer pong winning streaks that are exaggerated weeks later. Or we could tell the story through the community of mentors, teachers, four-ply hugging friends that we nurtured at this school. And I think the choice of story matters. You can look at your graduation as a deserved reward for hard work, as another peak attained through the accumulation of privilege and where you went to high school or the educational capacity of your parents, or as a miraculous moment when someone who can't even cook ramen somehow is able to graduate. All these perspectives contain truth, but the choice to assign certain stories more weight will affect the way we engage the world. In addition to choice, the degree of permanence also matters for our college story. Before commencement, this is commonly referred to as the BC era, the stories we tell about college are like weekend Snapchat stories, legendary in the moment and momentary and legend and full of terrible singing. After degree, this is commonly known as the AD era, I'm worried the stories we tell about college will become more entrenched, like those middle school pictures of you that will never go away and always resurface on Facebook. I've been thinking a lot about this after listening to This American Life episode about college admissions. There's a quote in there that says, "Stories we tell about ourselves, they're almost like our infrastructure, like railroads or highways. We can build them almost any way we want to, but once they're in place, this whole inner landscape grows up around them. So maybe the point here is that you should be careful about how you tell your story, or at least conscious of it. Because once you've told it, once you've built the highway, it's just very hard to move it." One unavoidable and seemingly immovable story this year has been the critique of the activist college student, known by cynical adults as the manifestation of all that is wrong with the millennial generation. Coddled complainers clueless to the real world. I think we should reframe that story. It's odd to call college students coddled when 80% of them work to pay for their ever-increasing college tuition. And this idea that free speech and advocacy for inclusion are mutually exclusive comes from people who have entrenched their stories into rigid infrastructure. They become necessarily mutually exclusive with other interpretations of the world. When you tell students their agitations for change would not cut it in the real world, the response is that those who preach about the real world's harshness should not stand in the way of those who still believe the real world can be changed, that the real world is constantly being changed. I think the better story to tell is that this graduating class is part of the most diverse and educated generation in American history, one that will build upon past generations' infrastructure, replace the rust of old stories, to construct superhighways powered by the sun, or the wind, or algae. Who knows? We believe the world and future stories are still malleable. So what comes next? What are you doing after graduation? Can I get a vigorous head nod from anybody who's gotten that question lately? What if our response was, I don't know? We're conditioned to view education as a process of knowing more things, but maybe instead it's the process of learning how to say I don't know in better ways. To question the assumptions we make about people, or the beginning of the universe, to be open to the perspectives of others, to avoid extreme sensationalism and search for a well-reasoned argument. In accepting the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1996, the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska said, "Whatever inspiration is, it's born from a continuous I don't know." Maybe this whole speech has just been me saying I don't know in different ways. Like I don't know the full range of superpowers of octopuses. So continue saying I don't know in wiser, more tolerant, more civil, more investigative, and deliberative, debate-based ways. When it comes to our graduating class's story, what if it started with a continuous I don't know? And after that, the rest would still be unwritten. Thanks.